The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gam Podcast Network is brought to you by Kalshi. Make real money predicting sports. Kalshi is available in all 50 states, plus you get $20 for free with the promo code SGPN. That's Kalshi, K-A-L-S-H-I, promo code SGPN. And welcome, everyone, to the Tennis Gam Podcast here on the Sports Gam Podcast Network. Currently Sunday afternoon, January 11th, around 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I am your host, always, Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the two upcoming events in Adelaide and in Auckland. So we are still pre-Aussie Open, but there are some, of course, qualifying matches going on during the next few days. But either way, Point is looking forward to the actual events. Before we get into the two events, though, I want to briefly recap what happened for the last episode in the title matches in, once again, Brisbane and Hong Kong. Unfortunately, not good. Ended up losing the lock and dog for the Lockwood Musetti. Team total over 12.5, minus 125. Had some chances in the first set. Had a break point, I believe, in the 5-5 game. Did not convert, and either way, eventually did lose in straight sets. Had a chance there, but lost in a breaker, and then got kind of buried in the second set. For the dog, ended up losing as well, as we ended up having a once again, interesting prop there in the first set. We had the Medvedev Nakashima first four games 2-2 at plus 100. Not even close, as Medvedev led 4-0. Nakashima no-showed the first 25 minutes of the match, give or take, and Medvedev did eventually win in straight sets. But for the lock and dog, we were banking on Nakashima to serve well for the first two games. We thought Medvedev would win, and unfortunately that didn't happen, as Medvedev came out firing, went up by a ton, and ended up losing the dog because of it. So not great when it comes to the lock and dog picks, but on the bright side, did win outright. We had Bublik to win Hong Kong at plus 550. So once again, could be worse. Definitely nice hitting and outright in the first preview episode of the year. Unfortunately, we did end up losing the outrights in Brisbane because we did not take Medvedev, who kind of coasted the entire way through. But Bublik got the job done at 550, and it was nice to cash an outright, our first outright of 2026. TN in the Next Gen Finals technically counts as 2025, but either way, nice start to the season with the outright, getting a nice 550 outright home at plus, once again, a good price at 550. So once again, the matches themselves are pretty straightforward, as Bublik ended up winning in straight sets. Was a very solid first set. Then Musetti's level dipped a bit, and Bublik stayed sharp the entire way through. But either way, it was a 7-6, 6-3 final. And then Medvedev had a very easy win against Nakashima, as he won 6-2, 7-6. 7-6 is misleading, though. Medvedev did have a couple of match points, and he ended up not converting. He had 2 match points on his serve in the 5-4 game. Did not get them, got broken, then won the breaker 7-1. So Medvedev could have easily won 6-2, 6-4. But either way, point is 2 favorites winning in straight sets. Not so much drama on the actual tennis card on Sunday, but hopefully it picks up moving forward into the next week. Anyway, before we get into any of the actual outrights for Adelaide, a brief reminder that you support the show by liking and subscribing to YouTube. Reminder, you can also find the podcast on Spotify or Apple. So podcast you can find on video format, YouTube-wise, or audio format only on Spotify or Apple. But no matter how you consume the show, leave some support. So like and subscribe on YouTube, leave a rating and review on Spotify or Apple. Plus, a reminder, we have some nice merchandise on the SGPN merch store. We have a lot of great tennis merch. We have sweatshirts, we have t-shirts, we have mugs. Think you'll like the options that we have. Very affordable. So once again, check out the actual merch store, not just for our show, but for the other shows with the network too. And we actually have a discount for the merch store because it's a new year, new gear. The SGPN merch store has a bunch of new items for the new year. And right now, get 10% off everything in the merch store. Promo code 2026. And once again, a reminder, if you want some tennis merchandise at a discount, 10% off everything in the merch store. Promo code 2026. So moving on into the actual preview of the events for the upcoming week. We're going to start off in Adelaide. Now, we do have quarters for Auckland, not for Adelaide. So I'll get Adelaide out of the way first, then we'll get into a deeper dive of Auckland. Starting off with the recent winners in Adelaide, you have seen a couple of different faces. You've seen Felix beat Korda last year, Salaheshka beat Draper, Kwan had the incredible lucky loser run as he beat Batista Agut, and you ended up seeing Djokovic beat Korda in a match you probably should have lost, but came back and he ended up winning. So nice job by Djokovic there. So once again, you have seen a pretty solid tournament based on just the different names associated with winning. Korda's the only guy that I mentioned multiple times in the recent winners list, because you tend to see different faces making good runs in the event. The court speed is pretty fast, at least by comparison to Auckland, so Adelaide will play faster by comparison. So keep an eye out for serving. As you can see listed here, a couple of good servers here. Felix, Korda's got a pretty good serve. Leheshka, we know he's got a solid serve and forehand. So good serving is not a deal breaker, but it helps on the courts here in Adelaide. Now for the actual outrights, once again, we have no quarter odds, so we're going to have to skip. We're going to reference them as we go through the actual outright choices, but a reminder, we have no quarter markets available to actually bet from right now. So for the actual odds, you have a pretty fun favorite because he's a meme, because he's never won a title before. Fokina is the favorite to win the event at plus 550. As you can probably tell by the way I'm describing it, I am not taking him to win the event. I'm not going to bet on a guy who cannot win an ATP title at plus 550. That's not going to happen. But he's favored at 550. Tommy Paul is at 650. Greek Sports at 7-1. Tsitsipas is at 8-1. Cerundolo is at 8-1. Nakashima is at 8-1. Makic is at 11-1. You have Humbert at 12-1. Korda 14-1. Vacherat plus 2,000. Popyrin is 2,000 as well. Munar 22-1, Opelka 25-1, Diallo 25-1, Kekmanovic 30-1, Fucsovic 45-1. If you want to go for a home country guy who actually has had success here before, Kokkinakis is 65-1. Anyway, so getting into the actual favorites here, Fokina's draw is actually favorable, but I still don't trust him in general. He hasn't played much tennis this year. We saw him lose to Nakashima early on in Brisbane, so we haven't exactly seen him play much this season. The draw is fine. Same quarter as Vacherat and Kekmanovic, and Korda. So you have a pretty tough bottom quartet of players with Vacherat, Kekmanovic, Korda, and Kokkinakis, but they're against each other first. And Fokina has a bye, then Schoolcat or Hijikata. So I do think Fokina has a good draw. I don't mind him to make the semis, but to actually win the entire event, I'm not going to pick that at 550. If it was around like 10-1, I'd consider it. But backing what so far has been one of the more talented players of all time to never win a single title, I will not take him at 550. And I think that if you do take him at 550, you're kind of nuts. Now, he can still win it to make you look smart, but at 550, I think that price is way too cheap. Not interested for that actual, once again, outright. Now, moving on to the other options, Paul's at 650. For his actual draw, it's not bad. Bottom half of the draw. It's not an amazing section, though. Has a bye, then Opelka or Popyrin. Very fun match, actually, for the first round. But I think Paul not playing much tennis. We saw him lose to Perricard in 3, despite not getting broken in the entire match. So Paul, once again, limited sample, and he did lose to a serve bot in his last event. Maybe it happens again with Opelka, and Popyrin does have home crowd support. So not exactly the easiest first match for Paul in this event. And he's in the same half section as, or the same quarter, as Tsitsipas and Diallo. So not really a big fan of the draw for Paul either. And with the lack of tennis he's played lately, not interested at that price point as well. Now, Greek Sport is at 6-1. And for his actual draw, it's not great either. He is a bye. Then the winner of Humbert and Ottman. Not a great match in the second round in terms of draw. I think that actually could be an upset potentially pending. And then he's in the same half as Nakashima or potentially Fucsovic. So a lot of the favorites don't have draws I really like. And I think for that reason, I am picking a bit more of an open tournament. Now, I know in, for example, Hong Kong, I went pure chalk, and it worked out because Bublik is one of the favorites, and you had Musetti and Bublik as two of the pre-tournament favorites facing off against each other for the title. I can see this going in a bunch of different directions, but I'm not going to take short prices on guys I don't trust. And with Fekina, with the lack of form this season and the fact that he's never won a title before, that's not a price I want to take at 550. Paul, I need to see a bit more besides one match against Pericard. And Griekspoor was also really bad in the United Cup, so not really a fan of his current form. Now, that's going to open the door for what could be a couple of polarizing choices, because I understand that involves backing a guy who might be extremely untrustworthy, but hear me out. So I shopped around and I found Tsitsipas at 12-1. Now I understand Tsitsipas is a guy that we make fun of on the show because we know that he is not exactly the most serious, and we also know that he's a guy who seems to really just struggle when it comes to accountability, and a guy who seems to kind of just let mistakes roll over and snowball as he kind of implodes. But I think 12-1 is a good price. First of all, I mentioned before with the recent finalists, the serving does help, and Tsitsipas's first serve is pretty solid. Now, he was pretty good in the United Cup as well. In fact, I believe he went undefeated in the United Cup. He had a nice win against Fritz in there, and I believe it was straight sets. But he ended up beating Fritz, he beat Harris, and he ended up beating Mochizuki. Not amazing competition. Fritz wasn't exactly that great in the event either, but Tsitsipas looked good, and I do think his draw is not that bad. He's in the same quarter as Paul. I will mention that Tsitsipas, the meetings are dated, but he is 3-0 lifetime against Paul. I believe he has not dropped a set against Paul in the head-to-head. But Diallo, I know, was pretty good last year. He had some moments, wasn't exactly the best to end the season. But I think Tsitsipas, with the actual draw, we know that he made the final in the Aussie Open a couple of years ago. He tends to handle these conditions in Australia pretty well. And I do think that facing a qualifier in the first round, then probably Diallo, and then maybe Paul in the third round. No guarantee, because Paul could potentially lose to Popyrin or Opelka. I think 12-1 is a good price. I think that Tsitsipas, with the form that he showed in the United Cup, can prove that 12-1 is a little bit large. 8-1 I mentioned before, that is the DraftKings line. I shopped around, found a better price, but I do think 8-1 sounds more accurate than 12-1. I'll take the 12-1. I think that Tsitsipas has the upside to make some noise. And going through my other choice, I got Makic at 16-1. Now, Makic, the main issue for him has always been durability, but I do think the draw is pretty good as well. He's in the same quarter as Cerundolo. Cerundolo, we know, is not exactly the best hardcourt player. He has talent, but he also has an unforced error issue. The serve is not that great, so I do think that Cerundolo can find himself on upset alert early, maybe even against Munar in his first match, so keep an eye out for that. But I do think that Makic's draw is pretty good. Has Duckworth in the first round. I know Duckworth can be a little bit tricky at times on hard court. He's more of a challenger guy. I don't think he's great, and I think Makic has the better weapons. But a qualifier guaranteed in the second round. He could beat Cerundolo. He's also going to be in the same half as Paul and Tsitsipas. So I do think Makic has an okay path if health is going to stay, I'd say, good for him, because we know that his fitness can be underwhelming at times. But 16-1, I think, is a good price for a guy who has the weapons to succeed on these courts. So I like him at 16-1, but that kind of tells you my thoughts on the event as a whole, because I am going for two separate guys at 12-1 and 16-1 with nobody in single digits for odds. And I am avoiding really any type of chalk. So I see a very open event, and going through the past, we have seen some favorites win. Felix, Leheshka wasn't a favorite, but he's still a solid top 30 caliber guy. Kwon was a serious, I'd say, shock to win the entire event. In general, though, I do think this actual field is not as top heavy as it has been in previous years. Fekina, Paul, and Griekspoor, though, I'm willing to fade those three guys, and I'll dare somebody else to step up and potentially win it outright. So I'm going to go with two guys instead. I'm not going for a serious long shot. Popyrin, I might have thought about, but he's been terrible for the last couple months, so I'm going to pass on him. Thought about Korda at 14-1. Wasn't a fan of the draw, though, having a match against, just pulling it up again, Kokkinakis, who could be tricky, and then Vacherad, who I know he just beat, but still not the best draw for Korda, and fitness can also be a concern for him. So I wanted to mention Korda I thought about, but I didn't like the draw, so I ended up passing on him too. Nagashima, I didn't mind the draw for, but he just made a final, and I wasn't really interested in backing a guy in the first two events of the year, playing on back-to-back weeks. Wasn't interested at that price of around 8-1. So once again, my two outright picks for the event here in Adelaide. The first pick is going to be on Tsitsipas at 12-1, and second pick will be Makic at 16-1. Before we get into the outrights for Auckland, a reminder they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Avo. So a reminder that you can make more money betting on sports with Avo. That's AVO. AVO is the best sports betting tool that helps you make a profit every time if you decide to place bets. They do this by spotting arbitrage and plus EV opportunities for you to make faster decisions. And once again, they do it a lot faster than their competition. So keep an eye out for that if you are looking to get into the arbitrage betting space. Keep that in mind because I do think that Avo can help you with that. If you're new to arbitrage betting, you'll find an opportunity in the market where you have a chance to bet both sides of one single outcome or event, and you're guaranteed to make some money. I arbitrage all the time. It's a good way to make guaranteed profit. They have a very organized dashboard, and it's very easy to use and understand. You just pick a sports book that you use, let Avo tell you, or you tell Avo how much you're willing to risk, and they will tell you what you should be betting to guarantee yourself a profit. And once again, they also have a nice free Discord. So if you want to check out the Discord, it's at AVO Official. So check that out, see the success people are having for themselves, and you can definitely get into it if you're interested. But get started now at avo.bet. Use the promo code SGPN for $18 off. That's avo.bet, promo code SGPN for $18 off. We're also brought to you by Kalshi. So if you're interested in real money prediction markets that are available in all 50 states, check out Kalshi because you can trade tons of markets in sports, including NFL, college football, college basketball, NBA, NHL, and more. You can also trade props like first touchdowns. You also can bet on you also invest in markets that are not sports related, like, for example, politics, entertainment, and even weather. And if you're interested in trying out Kalshi and you have not tried it out before, you have a nice sign-up deal. So new customers get $20 when you use the code SGPN at sign-up. That's Kalshi, Kalshi, promo code SGPN for a free $20 at sign-up. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the outrights in Adelaide. Time to move on into the outrights in Auckland. Now, a reminder, we do have quarters in Auckland, so we are going to mention the quarters first. Then we'll get into the outrights for the entire event. So for recent winners, we actually won the outright last year with Munfee. We got a great price, too, as he beat Bergs in the final. You saw Tabilo beat Daniel the year prior. Gasquet beat Nori. Humbert beat Paire. I believe there was a COVID gap between the Gasquet win and the Humbert win. But either way, you saw Sandgren beat Nori as well. So common theme here, unlike Adelaide, you have a decent amount of finalists who are not exactly the best at serving. Tabilo can occasionally ramp it up. Munfee, we know, has an okay serve. But for the most part, you see a lot of ralliers, like Taro Daniel making a final, Bergs making a final. I mean, even if you want to mention Sandgren winning an event. The point is not exactly, I'd say, a collection of serve bots here is what I'm trying to get at. I do think that serving is going to matter more in Adelaide than in Auckland, so keep an eye out for that. Now, for the actual quarters, reading off the odds here, first quarter, you have Shelton as the favorite at -105. You have Brooksby at 333. Nava is at 650. Bai is at 750. Royer's at 850. Comesaña's at 9-1. And you have Watt, the local Aussie, at 80-1. Now, I mentioned the serving not mattering as much because I think it segues perfectly into the first quarter. I'm not really interested in Shelton at -105. I've not seen him play really any tennis so far this season. But I do think in the quarter, I think it's a pretty favorable quarter. Spoiler, I'm not taking Shelton to win the event, but I do think the quarter is pretty weak. If you're looking at the actual draw for each of the favorites here, Shelton has a bye, then Comesaña or Royer. I could maybe see an upset, but I think Shelton will be a decent favorite. And then you have, on the other end, you have Brooksby, you have Watt, you have Nava, and you have Baez. So I actually like the draw quite a bit for Brooksby at 333. And he also fits into the mold of good ralliers without a great serve that have done well in this particular event. So I'm going to go chalk here. Give me the Americans. Give me Shelton at -105. And give me Brooksby at 333. I do think Royer could be intriguing if you want to go for a longer shot at around, what was that price at again? About $850. I think that could be intriguing. But I see chalk here. I think Shelton or Brooksby will get out of the group. And I do think it's definitely a weak quarter that Shelton and Brooksby can potentially exploit. Moving on into the second quarter for the event. So for the second quarter, Mickelson's the favorite at 2-1. Tabilo, former champions, at 375. Darderi's at 375 as well. Giron is at to 1. Mueller is at 650, Carabelli at 850, and Navone at 11 to 1. Now, Mickelson, I did praise in Brisbane because he played very well, did eventually get his ass kicked by Medvedev, but Medvedev won the entire event. So really no shame in that. I thought Mickelson played very well, but eventually he ran into a buzzsaw, which was Medvedev. Now, I do think for the actual draw for Mickelson, it is nice. Now, Navone is not good on hard court at all. We faded him for years on hard court, so a nice draw there for Mickelson in the first round. Moore or Giron could be interesting. I mean, Giron had a good run to the semis in Hong Kong. He was the only guy to take a set off Bublik in the entire event. So you can argue Giron might be able to make some noise here. But Mickelson, I think, has played very well to start the year. The serve's gotten a lot better. The rallying skills are there. Giron has a bit of a tough match against Moore in the first round as well. So if you want to go for a longer shot, I didn't mind Giron at 6 to 1. I'll put it this way. I get that Darderi does have a bye, but Darderi being 375 and Giron being 6 to 1 just feels fundamentally wrong in terms of pricing. But I'm going to go chalky again. I'm going to go with the favorites at good prices. Mickelson is at 2 to 1. I like him there. I think that he's played very well. To start the year, I thought that he served better than I was anticipating, and I hope that that translates to Auckland. But if it doesn't, he still has the rally skills to survive long points, and I do think 2 to 1 is objectively a solid price. Now, for Tabilo, who is the other favorite in the quarter, I think his draw is fantastic. I think he has the best draw you could possibly imagine for the sake of a plus 375 longer shot. You're looking at the draw Carabelli in the first round, who we know is not very good on hard court. Then he has Darderi, who's also not really good on hard court. So a great draw for a former champion at 375. I think Tabilo can be dangerous here, and I do think that his rallying skills and his variety can frustrate opponents. But I do think facing off against two clay specialists in the first 2 rounds is a great draw to get you into the quarterfinals. 375 is a bargain, so I'm going to take that. If you're asking which one I like more between Mickelson and Tabilo, it would be Tabilo at this price. But I do think that Mickelson at 2 to 1 is also a good deal, so I'll take both. So give me those two as my thoughts for the second quarter. Moving on to the third quarter. This is going to be the Mensik quarter. He's at 162. Norrie's at 333. Pericard's at 4 to 1. Medvedev is at 6 to 1. Gaston's at 9 to 1. Kovacevic is at 10 to 1. And Agut is at 14 to 1. Now, I took favorites in the first 2 quarters, the same exact thing. I took the 2 favorites and moved on. Third quarter, we're going to pivot because I was not a fan of how Mensik looked in the United Cup, and I think that he's really not played that well for the last couple of months. And I mentioned before that serving is not really paramount to success for this event. So I do think you're looking at a spot where Mensik could be an upset alert early, and I'm going to avoid him. Not to mention he's had some physical issues recently, but you're looking at the draw, Kovacevic or Medvedev in the second round. First match off bye. Not a great draw. We saw Kovacevic make the semis in the last event in Brisbane. So I do think that Kovacevic is playing well. I think he can maybe pull off the upset if he ends up getting there. Mensik, though, I think is a guy who I know won a 1,000 title last year in Miami. Since then, he really has not been that good, and I do think that he's been overvalued for this actual quarter. Now, the tricky part is you have a couple of good servers in a tournament where good serving, once again, is not that important. So Pericard, I don't think it's going to do that well based on the actual slower pace courts by comparison to Brisbane last week. And Medvedev has a good serve, but also not exactly the most patient player in terms of rally tolerance. So I see a couple of guys with good value who I think can out-rally their opponents and move on from there. Norrie at 333, I think it's a good overall once again, price. He was able to pull off a nice upset win in comeback fashion against Humbert in the last event. Gaston went through qualifying. Could be a potential upset, but I think Norrie is the better player, and each point should probably take about 15-plus shots. So I do think Norrie has a decent path. He has Gaston. Then he has either Agut or Pericard. Agut has not played since the U.S. Open, so rust could be a factor there, not to mention the fact he's also past his prime. So we'll see what happens, but I think Norrie 333 is a good price. And I know he played last week, but the price is way too big. Give me Kovacevic at plus 1,000. I think he can make a run. We saw him make the semis last week, and I do think 10 to 1 is a little bit too rich for a guy that we saw make 2 hardcourt finals last year, made a semifinal last week. I think he's a good hardcourt player. And 10-1, I think, is a price that is definitely large. I'll take it. I think 10-1 is a good flyer for this quarter. Moving on to the last quarter. This is going to be the Ruud quarter. So the Ruud quarter is, once again, pretty straightforward. He is the favorite at 125. Sorry, I'm trying to find the lines here. Did they just pull the lines on me? They did. To be honest, just going through the actual quarter, I only had Ruud at 125. I was not going to take anybody else. It is a very weak quarter. I know Monfils won the title last year. He has Morozin in the first round. Then he has Ruud in the second round. Monfils, I don't know how much left he has left at this point, but you're looking at his actual quarter being with Borges and Echeverry, who play against each other, by the way, in the first round. Manarino's not been very good lately. It's a pretty weak quarter. I only have Ruud. I just had the odds a second ago, and Bet365 pulled them on me. But I don't really need them. I was only going to take Ruud anyway. So I got Ruud at 125, and I'm going to move on from there. Thought he was pretty good in the United Cup. Did lose to Mensik, but he was able to destroy De Minaur. I think he'll play well on these slower-paced courts in Auckland. I'll take him there at 125. Now moving on to the outrights to actually win the event in Auckland. So starting off with the odds as always. Actually, I think they just pulled it on me. So let me just see if I can quickly find the odds. I should have just taken a screenshot of it, so apologies there. But let me just see if I could find it really quickly. So for the outrights in Auckland, sorry, let me just see what I can find here. Okay, so Shelton's at 350, Ruud's at 550, Mensik's at 650, Mickelson's at 9-1, Norrie's at 12-1, Brooksby's at 12-1, Perricard is at 14-1, Borges plus 2,000, Tabilo plus 2,000, Medvedev is at 20-1, Giron 28-1, Monfils 28-1. You kind of get the point. So for the outrights here, I'm skipping Shelton. I said before that good servers have not really done well historically speaking, and I do think that 350 is too short for Shelton, so I will pass on him. Now, Ruud I will take. I think Ruud has a good price at 6-1, which I found. I like the draw. I mentioned before that the quarter is very, very weak, and I do think if you're getting, I don't want to say it's a buy into the semis because it sounds disrespectful, but I do think it's a very favorable quarter where Ruud should find himself in the semis minimum, but I thought he was fine in the United Cup, and once again, his biggest opponent in the quarter is Borges, or if you want to argue, post-prime Monfils. I like the actual draw, same half as Mensik, who has really not been good for the last couple months. I think that 6-1 is a great price on Ruud. I'll take that there. Now, Mickelson, I will take. I found 11-1 as the best price. I know when I read off the odds, I said Mickelson was 9-1. I found a 12-1. But I like how he played in Brisbane. I think that he can translate some of that success into winning matches here. And I do think the draw is nice. Yes, Giron can be potentially tricky in the second round. Navone, not good on hard court, same quarter as Darderi. I think he can make some noise. I know he's not won a title in his career yet, but I like how he played. And if he actually did truly fix his serve, which by all accounts it looked like he did in Brisbane, I think he's very dangerous. I'll take him there at 11-1. I'm also going to go for Brooksby at 16-1. Now, I said when I read the odds, it was 12-1. I found a 16. I'll take it. Yes, I know he's in the same quarter as Shelton, but Shelton might be an upset award against Royer or Comasagna. We'll see. Great draw for Brooksby. Has a wild card who is like minus 1,000 against, and then he has Nava or Baez. Great draw initially, and Shelton has not been very good in this event in the past. So I do think you're looking at a spot where it could be a good path for Brooksby, and he's in the same half as Mickelson and Darderi. So I like the actual path. I think that his skill set translates well to the courts in Auckland. I'll go for Brooksby as well. Last but not least, my long shot for the event, Tabilo at 28-1. Former champion here. All of you know that I'm a fan of Tabilo. I've given him out to win events before, and we've won while giving him out for events. But the point is, Tabilo, we saw win a hardcore title last year during the Asian portion of the calendar, as he was able to beat Musetti in the final, and I believe it was Shangdu. He's good. I mean, at the end of the day, he has been struggling with consistency, but a great path. Carabelli, then Darderi, then potentially Mickelson in the quarter. I think it's a great price at 28-1. And the fact that he's won here before tells you that his style of play is going to really translate to success on the courts here. Give me Tabilo at 28-1. So I'm picking a bit more chaos when it comes to these events than last week. I think that this will be a pretty unpredictable week of tennis, and I do think you'll end up seeing a lot of upsets over the course of the next few days. So once again, the outright picks that we have here for Adelaide and for Auckland. For Adelaide, for the outrights, we're going to go with Tsitsipas at 12-1 and Makic at 16-1. For Auckland, for the quarters, because we have to recap those two, we have Shelton at -105, and we have Brooksby at +333 in the first quarter. Second quarter, we have Mickelson at +200, and we have Tabilo at +375. For the third quarter, we have Norrie at +333, and we took a long shot flyer with Kovacevic at 10-1. Fourth quarter, we have Ruud by himself at +125. For the outrights to win the entire event in Auckland, we have Ruud at 6-1 as our favorite. We have Mickelson at 11-1. We have Brooksby at 16-1. And we have Tabilo at 28-1. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the outrights for Adelaide and Auckland. Time to move on into the lock and dog picks. Before we get into the lock and dog, a reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Underdog Fantasy. So if you like Pick'em entries, chance to win 5,000 times your entry. They're bringing the playoff magic all playoffs long. Every playoff weekend, open the app to see what promos are waiting for you. And we also have a nice sign-up deal with Underdog. So if you go to Underdog and you're new customers play just $5, get $75 bonus funds when you sign up with the promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. They've been great this NFL season, especially on props, so check them out there. Super easy to sign up, run predictions off the house model, or make your own and mess with the sliders. But you can build your own model if you want to. So if you're interested in experimenting with model building for sports betting, check out Rhythm. And if you want to go premium, you can use the promo code SGPN25 when you download the app, and you'll get a nice 25% off your first month. That's Rhythm, RITHMN, promo code SGPN25 for a quarter off your first month. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Scaling Podcast. Finished going through the outrights for Adelaide and for Auckland. Time to go on into the lock and dog picks. So for the lock on the show, I mentioned before I'm picking him to win the event. I mentioned that we faded this guy a lot in the past, and we're going to fade him once again. We're going to fade Navone. We're going to take Mickelson in straight sets at -110. That was on DraftKings. Navone, we know, is horrific on hard court. That has not changed. He has lost 6 in a row on hard court. So we saw him last week. He showed up. He lost to Wang in straight sets in Hong Kong. He's not good on hard court. We know that he can't serve. Mickelson should really feast off of Navone's serve, and I do think Mickelson will break him a ton. Mickelson, I think, will serve pretty well, or at least well enough to hold in order to actually win this in straight sets. But we saw Mickelson look good with the serve last week, lost to Medvedev, no shame in that. Before that, he was kind of coasting. But the point is, he looked good, made the semis last week, and he's against a clay specialist. I really like the draw, and I really like the price for Mickelson. I'll go for him in straight sets at -110 as my lock for the show. For the dog, I know last outright episode, we ended up going with the Pericard first set over. Why would we change anything when we got the exact outcome we needed? We'll go forward again. We're going to go with the Agut Pericard first set over 10.5 games, +140. Now, +140 for Pericard blindly is a bargain because he never breaks anybody. We saw him make it into the quarters last week despite not breaking a single time. He faced Tommy Paul and Hijikata. Both of them went 3 sets, and he broke 0 times against both guys. So if you're not going to break Hijikata in the span of 3 sets, I have no faith in you even breaking Agut, who has not played in months. But the point is, Pericard, we know, is a serve bot extraordinaire. All of his sets are competitive because he never breaks anybody. 8 of Pericard's last 10 matches have had a 7-5 or a 7-6 first set. Agut, though, dating back to last year, has had a couple of longer first sets as well, as 4 of his last 7 have had a 7-5 or a 7-6 set. But Agut has not played since the U.S. Open, like Paul in the previous tournament. It's not an easy match to come back with. You show up after a long layoff and face off against an absolute serve bot. I expect the return game to be rusty. I think Perricard will hold. Agut, though, has done well in the past at this event. We know the court speeds will be a bit slower by comparison to Brisbane and to Adelaide. I think the slow court speeds will help Agut because Agut's going to want to rally, and we know Perricard is terrified of points lasting more than 4 shots. So I can see a similar story to the first set of the Paul match, which coasted to a tiebreak, which is Agut holding courtesy of a bunch of long points where Perricard eventually hits an error, where by the same point, like Paul, Agut won't be able to return. So based on that, give me the first set over. Plus 140 is a bargain. That's on Bet Rivers. I'll take that as my dog for the show. So once again, the lock and dog. The lock's going to be on Mickelson in straight sets against Navone at minus 110. For the dog, I'm going to go with the Bautista Agut and Perricard match. First set over 10.5 games at plus 140. It's going to wrap it up for the show. Back once again for the quarters in Adelaide and Auckland. So back in a few days. Reminder, though, if you want to support the show, like, subscribe on YouTube, leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple, and a reminder, check out the merch store as well. Find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Till next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.